Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. We're now pretty much 1 year on from the riots last summer in the wake of the Southport attacks, so it seems a perfect time to inquire as to whether the country is learning the lessons of the riots or whether things are actively getting worse and we're just going to see more civil disturbances. The BBC is leading the charge with regards to the post-riot analysis, and as you might imagine, it's doing its utmost to squeeze it into a globalist liberal narrative. If you visit the BBC today, you'll see you can read about a mother who says she regrets taking her son to a riot following the Southport attack. And to give the devil his due here, there is a legitimate angle on that. Riots are a time of hysteria and smashing up your own local town, blaming innocent people, attacking people, doesn't really do any good for anybody. Yet we'd be wise to remember the BBC didn't take this editorial angle when it came to the BLM riots a few years before. In fact, they still have on their website now plenty of pieces exploring and essentially excusing the riots from various socio-cultural angles. Yet when it comes to the riots last summer, the BBC are busy making propaganda documentaries explaining the riots away as simply stupid working class people who believed evil far-right misinformation online. Now, as I said at the time, misinformation is a real problem in the social media age. Yes, it does need to be tackled. However, it feels that the liberal media tend to focus on that and that only because it acts as a sort of tip of the iceberg that they can show to the public. The reality is the problems are a lot deeper and a lot more complex. Case in point, in the BBC piece, in only the 5th paragraph, they state straight away that the riots were rooted in misinformation, that the killer at Southport was a Muslim asylum seeker. Indeed, that was misinformation, yet they've also lied by omission because, as we all remember, the mainstream media was very happy to imply that this was a simple Welsh choir boy. They didn't want the public to know it was a second-generation Rwandan migrant with questionable religious beliefs as well as a potential racial animus towards white people. The tolerant and caring liberals at the BBC also aren't so fussed about a forgotten underclass in the country whose concerns for decades now have been squished in the endless drive of mass immigration and diversity propaganda. These people have been pushed to the edge over a number of decades and were ready to explode. But of course these people are white working class, so they're not worth rich academic explorations into the socio-cultural reasons as to why these things could happen. And to sum up what awful propagandists they are, who don't really care about these issues at all but just want to push their own liberal worldview, this whole piece doesn't mention people's contemporary concerns with the sexual assaults that are going on at all. Now, I read this piece in full to check the editorial propaganda line the BBC were taking, and I even put the word sexual into my finder to see if I wasn't missing anything, and yeah, they didn't mention it once, although in a twist of modernity, the only time you'll hear about anything sexual is apparently now we can be in control of our sexual health because the gonorrhea vaccine rollout has begun. Big news that I'm sure we're all delighted about. We'll all be getting our gonorrhea jab after this video's done. We'll be as chuffed as this fella in the BBC's piece all about. He's absolutely delighted about his gonorrhea jab, isn't he? Dear Lord, the state of Western man in modernity. But look, we all know what's going on here. The powers that be have zero interest in what's really afflicting the country. They just want to hammer everything in to their narrow liberal ideology. However, the issue is 1 year on from the riots, that's really not working at all, which is why protests are hitting the streets again. And this is why things are bubbling up again. Every time a horde of asylum seekers, usually young fighting-age males, are bussed into a new area, the local people come out and say they don't want this. Protests start to occur on the streets. These protests get even more lively if one of these new arrivals has been accused of assaulting one of the local young girls. Presumably this is why the police now attempt to cover up examples of asylum seekers that have been accused of raping children. I'm sure that's not going to lead to things popping off down the line, is it? It seems we're back to modern Britain's basic operating structure. You're all stupid, evil bigots who couldn't tie your own shoelaces if you tried. You need to believe in the institutions who will openly lie to you and watch the BBC and chant in unison diversity is our strength. Instead, we're supposed to ignore that people are coming here en masse from countries that commit crazy levels of crime compared to the host population, especially of a sexual nature. We're also supposed to ignore that some of these asylum seekers lean out of their windows and film the protesters, mocking them and laughing. We're also supposed to ignore that London has turned into a violent cesspit. On your screen right now are some, Turkish barbers fighting over something or other, maybe kebab shop owners. Who knows what they're fighting about? Who knows where they got these sticks? Who knows why they're blooded up? Who knows if the police will even turn up? Another clip symbolising the direction London is firmly headed in is in your screen right now. Here we have a security guard, and good for him, trying to tackle a shoplifter. I've been in shops in London before. Most of them do nothing if someone's stealing anything. But anyways, you can see you trying to pin this guy down, subdue him, wait for the police to come. Good for him, working hard. However, the brothers come along to free this young man, emancipate him from this unjust lock that he's in, to let him fight another day. Yet, of course, the police turn up to these protests. Apparently in Canary Wharf, they've told the protesters there that they can't come back for 28 days now under the pain of arrest because they're upsetting the asylum seekers.
Okay. Right. There's a section 42. Right. Section 42 in place of the 2001. You're causing distress or harm to the resident of this hotel. Yeah. You have to leave now and not to return within 28 days to this area. If you don't, you will be arrested. Okay?
So you're telling me that we're not allowed to come back and protest
for 28 days because you're causing distress or harm to the resident of this hotel.
Is there anything?
If you don't comply with that, you will be arrested.
Now look, if I'm wrong about this and these protesters have been engaging in mass rioting, beating people up, being violent, then fine, the police have to implement order. But if they're just blocking people from protesting against what's going on, this feels extremely draconian. And just as I was making this video, I Googled to see the latest, and The Independent is reporting that protesters tried to break into the Canary Wharf Hotel. That may well be why they've put this order down. Secondly, The Telegraph reported yesterday evening that the peaceful protest was hijacked by masked men who are apparently being violent. This is why I often say, anger, rioting, they're not the answer to the problems we face, because the mainstream liberal media will now just run with this and say, oh, these people are just violent maniacs, etc., etc. Then, of course, the liberal system can ignore the key issues and just crack on with its own regime. But I must say, I'm at the point now where my faith in the institutions is so low, I do question who these supposed masked men are. London is famous for being one of the most surveilled cities in the world, Canary Wharf especially. If you want to know who these people are, you just follow them afterwards. Is it really beyond the realm of possibility that the state could have used this as a false flag and actually implemented these people? Again, I'm not saying that's the case. If I had to wager, probably not. The point I'm making is I'm at the point now where my trust in the institutions, the powers that be, is so low, I wouldn't put it past them. And again, this sort of thing happens to the general public when the powers that be are being accused of cover-ups, when asylum seekers themselves are being accused of raping children. It seems easy to forget in this era of liberal propaganda, but the main role of the government and the authorities is to protect and serve the public. However, we seem to be in a situation now where that's completely flipped, and they see it as their role to protect the interests and needs of those from the outside. Now, regular viewers to the channel will know I believe this has been a long time in the making. I've explored the foundations often. The death of our tradition, the death of the masculine principle which can implement boundaries and support the tribe. All of that's gone and been replaced by a sort of hyper-feminized radical leftist ideology which seems to underpin modern life. Yet I think we're reaching the point now where the general public, across Europe actually, is completely sick to the back teeth of this. We're sick of the liberal elites in their ivory towers with their deluded utopian ideologies, lecturing the rest of us rubes about how evil and stupid we are, and how we need to accept yet more mass immigration, be more multicultural. In fact, we're at the point now where this soft feminine compassion is bordering on a toxic empathy that's actively suicidal. Well represented by this woman who's been on the TV again. I always forget her name. It's Zoe something or other. Let's just call her Angelic Pixie Face. And I say this because A, she's got a pretty face, hasn't she? But B, it's her attitude. It's all heavy on this compassion, and in a just world she'd live in some quaint English town where she cares for the community and the local children. However, in modernity, that feminine instinct has been manipulated into the service of the regime. So, like so many Western women, she's been propagandized into believing it's part of intersectional social justice to look out for the needs of asylum seekers who are innocent little bunnies who need to be protected, don't you know, not realizing that this ideology is completely suicidal for the Western world.
What about, Zoe, those people, and there'll be many of them watching today, who think we should stop taking asylum seekers, that there are too many here, and that ultimately maybe there should be a moratorium, for example, on asylum claims while we sort through this backlog?
Well, I'm afraid that's just not realistic, because if you say we're not going to process any more claims...
Why is it not realistic?
Well, people just need to find protection. They do. We've seen the horrors that are taking place in the Middle East, in Sudan, in Eritrea. These are the key countries people are coming from. The UK has a colonial history. That means that we have ties with countries all over the world. We will always be a destination for immigration, and we have an aging population that needs immigration.
Ugh. Dear Lord, you have to laugh, otherwise you'll cry. What has happened to our poor Western women? Who has done this to them? Anyway, I do wonder sometimes if the system's doing all of this on purpose so they can censor dissenting voices and then really implement their long-term mission. For now, at least, I get to speak. But as many of us know, as much as our liberal leaders say we have a proud tradition of free speech, they're always trying to censor us. At the heart of this is another political manipulation, well summed up by the ex-German Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Just to repeat what I already said, we have the freedom of speech in Europe and in Germany. Everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions.
All very lovely and liberal sounding, but of course the issue is, who defines what the extreme right is? After all, in modern Britain, being against pride marches is extreme right, being concerned by mass immigration is extreme right, being concerned about multiculturalism is extreme right. And to tie everything together, this is why liberal institutions, which are basically just an apparatus of the liberal regime, enforce the ideological line that they do. If they can paint the cultural phenomena and social disturbances we experience all in the frame of the extreme right versus the rational, centre, liberal position, then they can censor you. We are in chaotic times, friends. We must stay calm and measured and close to the truth, and we can work through it all. Do let me know what you think about this down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you know.